All right. Well, welcome students to this optional drop-in session for Human Development 499. I'm really thankful that we have a student here, and I'm going to just do a little spiel for you all for the method section. Right now, you all should be doing your literature review. I hope that I provided enough materials for you to understand how to go about doing your literature review. If you have questions, though, as you're finishing up this week, just reach out to me. But I really encourage everyone to go back to course materials week 3 and 4, because there's lots of material on how to go about writing that. But really quick, I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to actually show you where to find something that maybe you haven't found yet. Can you see that? Can you see this screen, Megan?
Yeah, I see it.
Oh, okay. I just want to make sure. This is actually my dashboard here for Canvas. Looks like yours, maybe some extra things that you don't have. So there's probably like, what is that? Some of that stuff is just for professors. So under the APA format samples, like you have weekly course materials, okay? Under APA format samples and tips, if you go down to this, this icon here, template for research paper, senior seminar, this is going to be a really good tool to use to format your paper. And you can actually take this document and pretty much just use it as a guide to ensure that you are writing your paper, one, in APA format or APA style, and that you're including all of the required materials or required headings, in the paper. So as you all see, this is the structure that I would like your paper to be in. Your title page. Please keep in mind, though, before I go through this, you're going to put this paper together in pieces. So if you know right now you're doing the literature review, then the next part is your method. The third part is your results, and the final part is your discussion. So when you put these pieces together, it goes into one paper, this one format, okay? So it goes in order. So your title page. Now, the second page I want to point out really quick is your abstract. You will not write your abstract, which is it's a summary of the contents of your paper, but you haven't finished your paper yet, so you cannot write your abstract until you finish the whole project. So this is your last thing that you write before you submit it to me. But it goes on page 2, because if you remember, when you do your research, when you did your literature review, I'm sure when you went to the library online or wherever you found your materials, sometime in the library you'll see that there's an abstract that gives you a little overview of what the paper is about that you're thinking about reading. So that's why you write an abstract. It kind of gives you an idea of, oh, okay, well, this is what this particular paper is about. So I'm really interested in it because of this reason or that reason. So the abstract helps the potential reader, decide if they even want to read your paper. All right. So that's why you write the abstract, but that's last, even though it's on page 2. So you can just create you a little space page here for page 2. Then you actually get into the actual paper, which right now you're working on the literature review, which is the first part. It starts on page 3. So I would encourage you all to look at this document in depth to make sure before you submit your literature review that you've covered everything. And I would just encourage you to use the same format, because if you use this format, then you'll be right. So that's just something to keep in mind. You don't have to recreate the wheel, make up your own way of doing it. You want to have a title for your paper, which of course the title first appears on page 1. And then it also appears on page 3. Now you might look at this top left, it says first few words of title. In APA style, you always put the first few words of your title on the top of each page on the left-hand side. So if your paper is about like single and dual parent households, if that's your title, you could put single and dual parents. Okay, you don't have to do the rest of it. All right, so just the first few words. So as you go through here for the literature review, hopefully you guys have done a little summary. Then you go into the purpose of your study. And the purpose of your study, you're just going to write your study, meaning what you want to find out when you do your method, when you actually conduct your study. Okay. So you provide a brief description of what you want to find out. And you've already done that when you did your research questionnaire, your research question form that you turned in. All right. Take some information from that and put it in the purpose of the study. Then you're going to state your research question, which I've already approved. Then you're going to do your operational definitions. I think I've talked about this before, but I'll briefly say this again. Please, in your literature review, make sure that you are defining words that go along with your operational, words that go along with what you're going to be researching. So I'm going to pick on the student that's here today, Megan. She's talking about dual and single parent households. So she would need to define what is a dual household, right? Mm-hmm. Is that right, Megan? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, so she would need to define what is a dual household. Now, there's probably lots of definitions about what a dual household is, but she's going to, based on her research, define what a dual household is based on how she's defining it. She can use information that she's found in her literature review. She can kind of make up her own thing, but then back it up with support from a particular source. But it's your own definition based on what you're looking for. Another example I used with another student was adolescence. Well, some people might say an adolescent is ages 12 to 18. Some people might say an adolescent is age, 12 to 24. Everybody has different definitions of what an adolescent entails. You have to operationalize or define what your definition of adolescence is, based on who you're going to be studying. Okay, so that's just an example of what I mean when I say operational definition. Then you go into your actual literature review, and it's really an overview of what you have studied, which leads us back to the annotated bibliography that you just finished, right? You did 15 sources. Hopefully all 15 sources end up in this literature review where you're doing a review of what is already out there about your topic. Okay, I have other videos that I've posted from previous years about this, so I'm not going to get into a lot of detail because today I'm getting ready to focus on the method. But I just wanted to give you a little quick overview for those of you who are vigorously working on your literature review to make sure that you understand these components that a lot of students typically miss. And I have to say, go back and fix that. Hopefully you'll see this before Sunday and you'll say, oh, I think I need to fix that. And then you won't have to go back and revise. Okay. Megan, do you have any questions so far?
No, I'm pretty good. I get it.
Oh, awesome. Okay. And I'm sorry I'm picking on you, but since you're here, I figured it would be, I wanted it to be interactive. So that's why I'm asking. But you know what? Chime in if you have any questions. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. So method. All right. So what does this mean? Okay. Hopefully you guys have already read what this is. You have an idea. The method is basically how are you going, it's the instructions. How are you going to go about carrying out your original research project on your topic? Okay. So as you can see, there's this kind of looks funny. Hold on. I don't think I can edit this, but so what you're going to do is you're going to let us know how you're going to carry out your project. Okay. So the first part of the method is your research design. And what I've included is instructions or a brief overview of what each section means that you have to include in your method. So this is where your Babby text comes in handy. And all of you should have already taken 302, key research methods, and you should have a little bit of an idea of what a research design is. I try to keep it very simple here. And I ask you to just briefly describe what your research design is. Is it, as you can see here, it should include whether it's qualitative, which is really based on, when I think of qualitative, you think of someone doing an interview, you think of words, language, and you pull out themes based on what your interviewee, or if you do a questionnaire that's written where people give you ideas, you pull that out and that is your data. So qualitative is words and language. Quantitative is numbers, okay, and how numbers, how they tell a story. So I really encourage you all, if you do the quantitative research design, I would encourage you to do something simple like descriptive statistics. I would encourage you to stay away from trying to improve causality, which would be more of an experimental design, because that takes a lot longer and you have to have a lot of skill. Whereas descriptive statistics could be as simple as you doing a questionnaire and adding up how many people said this versus that, right? And then that's your results. Now, your results are not going to be like very valid doing it that way, but I want you all to remember this. This is why I'm doing this, because students get really caught up with, oh my gosh, this has to be perfect. And I have to have like 100% validity and reliability. And, I can't make any mistakes. Please look at research as, I don't know, it's just like a basket of mistakes, right? You have every intention of doing everything right with, making sure that everybody answers this question precisely. And, you get it out to the people at the right time. And, you have all these guidelines of what you're trying to do. Or maybe your participants are not, it's not a sample that is what, if you look at the Babby test, is really legitimate. However, this research seminar class is for your experience and for you to apply what you've learned in 302, which is the research methods class, and see if you can actually complete a study. And I want you all to do simple things, okay? I don't want you to do anything too extravagant, because you'll get overwhelmed, because we only have 16 weeks in this class and we're already in week 5. All right. So I want you to keep it very simple. But when I finish with this, I'm going to show you another document that's been in the classroom, but I want to point it out so you can consider how you are going to proceed with your method. How are you going to, carry out your research design? So the first part is simply, you tell me what you're going to do. The research design that, for example, you could use a qualitative research design using grounded theory. Well, what the heck is grounded theory? Well, I want you to look it up if you don't know what it is, but it's really an inductive research method where you might interview a group of individuals about their experience as an elderly person in COVID. So grounded theory, qualitative study using grounded theory is, you're just trying to find out information. You're not really trying to compare or contrast anything or find out a specific answer, but you are asking about a person, specifically, you're trying to figure out, I'm sorry, I got that flipped up. I got that backwards. I'm actually talking about phenomenological when I'm saying this. I apologize. I read the wrong word. Phenomenological is about the person's experience, excuse me. So the example I use is correct with the elderly person and what their experiences is with COVID. You're finding out about how they experienced it. So it's really an exploratory study to find out more about this person's experience. So you're going to use words and the language that they give you, and you're really going to find out more about it. And you're going to report that. And you might actually find themes across your 5 or 6 individuals that you have interviewed about their experience with COVID. And then you report that in your results. A grounded theory is a little different. With grounded theory, it refers to more of and I have this here, a systemic inductive bottom-up method for conducting qualitative research. So it is exploratory, but you're really trying to answer a specific question. And the specific question that you're trying to answer, for example, could be, teens and social media, for example. Does social media affect teens' ability to study? Right. So you might interview a group of teenagers and ask them, what their issues are with the social media and how it might interfere. So you're really trying to find something out specific. So the grounded theory is from the ground up, what theories are going to come out of those interviews. And then you're going to actually code them. So I'm not going to get into this in this particular lecture today, but I do have handouts and other videos in the method section in the course materials that talk about how to conduct an interview using either the grounded or the phenomenological theory. All right. But you're just going to tell me in a few sentences, what is your research design? You're not going to carry it out. You're just telling me. Remember, the method is the instructions. The next part is participants. Who are your participants? And you describe them in detail. All right. Now, one thing I'm going to say about the method really quick that everybody gets tripped up on. I'm going to say this I want y'all to hear me when I say this. When you're writing this in the next few weeks, know that you have not done the study yet. You are just writing your instructions. So you are going to be writing this in future tense versus past tense. So you're going to say the participants will be adolescents ages 12 to 17 who live in the Cal State East Bay area who have disabilities, have academic disabilities. Those are your participants. Now, will be, because you haven't done it yet. So write it in the future tense. Now, what you're going to do, the whole thing, then what you're going to do when you actually conduct the study, before you submit your final paper, you're going to have to go back to the method section and actually tell us what actually happened. So, okay, participants. The participants will be 5 to 6 adolescents who live in the East Bay area who have disabilities. All right. When you go back, maybe you actually only interviewed, you actually tell exactly how many you did interview. All right. And what if something happened where you didn't get them all in the East Bay area, but you ended up interviewing somebody across the state in LA? All right. So then you go back and fix it to say the participants were 5 adolescents ages 12 to 15 who lived in the East Bay area, and 1 adolescent ages 12 to 15, or 2 adolescents ages 12 to 15 who lived in LA. So I'm saying this to say you're going to be more specific when you come back and rewrite your method to tell us actually what happened. Who actually did you end up? Because you're telling me your intention in the next few weeks. But really, again, like I said, research can be messy. You might end up not doing exactly what you say you did because stuff happens. So you go back and you write it in past tense and you tell me exactly who your participants were. Same with the materials. What do you plan to use? You plan to use an online survey, a semi-structured interview. The researcher intends to use or plans to use an online survey asking questions related to adolescents with disabilities and to find out about their experiences with their academic experience. Okay. Then you tell me what you're using. You use an online survey. Are you going to have to use Zoom to do the interviews? Are you going to send out a survey to the listserv of Cal State East Bay? You be very specific about what materials you're going to be using. Okay. You can write it in paragraph form. If you have a lot of materials, it's okay to even list them in bullets. All right. But tell me an overview of what materials you're using. Procedure. The next step is the procedure. It tells me specifically how you're going to conduct it. Meaning, think about the W's, who, what, when, where, why. Okay. Maybe not why, but what mostly. All right. And the brief description I have here is, where are you going to conduct the study? In what time frame? Because let's say you're doing a content analysis, for example, where you don't even have participants. Okay, that's another thing. Some of you might do a content analysis where you're actually going to be looking at secondary material, such as maybe you're going to be doing, I'm trying to think of an example. I've had so many students do all kind of different projects. One comes to mind. One person decided to do a content analysis on, it's funny, y'all may have heard the term gaslighting. This is very popular in pop culture now, about somebody like, I think it's about, making somebody's feel like altering their reality about what they're really thinking. And the student was talking about how gaslighting occurs in romantic relationships, and she wanted to find out how often that occurred. So she decided to, instead of interviewing people, she decided to look at videos or look at shows, a show called Love is Blind on Netflix. And it was very interesting. And so she chose to look at 5 or 6 shows, across the 3 weeks that she collected the data, because you have 3 weeks to collect your data. And she coded what she was saying as far as what gaslighting was, what she thought was, based on the words that the people were saying, based on attitudes or looks. And she coded the things that she saw in those videos. And that's how she collected her data. So her participants weren't people, but it was a 6 episodes of Love is Blind were her participants. And I think you can even make them like more believable by even naming the people from the show, or, there were 6 couples in the show. So if anybody's doing a content analysis, reach out to me if you need help with that. And that's a fun way to do it. And you don't have to worry about real live people. Just to let you know. Okay. So the procedure is how you're going to do it. So with the Love is Blind thing, the student had to do it over a 3-week period, right? Your study might only take 1 day. If you're going to send out the surveys, well, you send out the surveys on this date, and then you have them returned by another date. All right. So you still want to tell the timeline of how long it's going to take you to collect the data and what steps you need to take. All right. Be very specific. Even if you talk about how you advertise, you have to talk about how you advertise to collect the data. That's important as well. Okay. Next, you are going to, the last step after your procedure is data analysis. Now, you are not analyzing your data yet, but this helps transition to the next section, which is the results. And I'm not going to go over that today. But the data analysis is basically telling me how you plan, again, it's future tense, how you plan to interpret your data. And it kind of restates what you said in your research design. I plan to, I plan to analyze my qualitative grounded theory research design by, like with the example of Love is Blind, by examining the words that were coded during my data collection and come up with conclusions of what my findings are. And I would encourage you all to even define what grounded theory is, what phenomenological theory is, what descriptive statistics you're planning to use if you decided to use the quantitative, and use the Babby text to define it and cite it. Very simple. It's a paragraph long, and then you go into the results where you actually show your results. And I'll do another video or another class about that next. So that's the overview of the methods section, and I hope that was helpful, where you all can see all the things that go into this. This is your research. Remember that, okay? And It's up to you how you do it. But before we finish, we have a few more minutes. I want to share this document with you to help you decide how you are going to conduct your and put together your method section. So give me 1 second. I'm going to stop sharing here. Megan, I see you're still with me. Actually, give me 1 second here. Let me go out of this. I'm going to share one more document with you in just 1 second. Okay, I want you to go back, when you go back to the modules under week 1, go back to week 1 course materials. And I want you to look for this document that says, read this before you decide on your topic. Hopefully you have read this already, but if you haven't, that's okay. And if you have, it might be good to revisit it before you decide on the method that you're going to do to find the answer out to your research question. So for Human Development 499, we have tried to simplify the process for you on how many participants you should, attempt to collect data from. This way you won't get overwhelmed. When I taught this class many years ago, when we first started out, students were thinking they had to get, like, for a qualitative, study, they thought they had to, like, do a survey for 500 people. Well, I'll say this: if you're doing something for publication, or you're really trying to prove, get a correlational connection or a causality, then you're going to probably have to interview a whole lot more to get that. And it has to be very, very systematic. However, for the purposes of this project, again, this is just a sample to help you go through the whole research project, experience. So if you do decide to go to graduate school, you'll have had this experience, and it won't be so overwhelming when you actually have to do a project like this. So we have narrowed it down to say, for your methodological guidelines, that you're permitted to use 4 of the following methodologies, okay? And I went over them briefly when I was going over the content of the method, but I'll go over it again. In-depth narrative interviews, okay? Now, you don't have to do 100 interviews, only 3 to 5. And each interview should only be a minimum of 30 to 60 minutes and transcribed. Remember, if you saw in the other document, you could use a tape recorder to transcribe. You could be creative and actually do a Zoom interview and record your Zoom call. Or if you do it in person, definitely, I think people can do recordings on their phone now. There's so many different ways to record your interview, because then you're going to have to transcribe it. Please know, I do not want to see your transcription. This is for you, because the data analysis part is you're going to pull those interviews, which is why they only should be, I would really say 30. 60 is a lot to transcribe. Keep it short. Keep your interview questions to a minimum. I would say 10 at the max. Keep it simple. Okay, KISS, right? Keep it simple, because I do not want you all to get overwhelmed. Focus on the research question, and it should be very specific. So you're asking specific questions to your interviewees. Or if you're going to do a quantitative method and you're going to use a survey, a Likert type survey where it's A, B, C, D, or yes or no, keep that simple too. Do not write 50 questions, or you're going to have to analyze 50 questions. Okay. Now, so let's go back to the in-depth narrative. You can do that. You can do a content analysis. I've already described what that is. And please, there's more content in the Canvas to tell you what that is, and I can help you with that. You can do an organizational case study where, let's say you are at a volunteer site. or maybe maybe a homeless shelter, and you have access to this organization, and maybe they're having a problem. Maybe you've heard, oh gosh, they're having problems, getting blankets for the homeless, and you want to find out, what's going on with that, what are the ins and outs, and you can do a research project on that. So you can do that, a case study for an organization. Or you can do the descriptive statistics for quantitative method. And that's, again, where you will send out a survey, closed-ended questions, a Likert type scale, and people will answer those questions based on what you want to find out with your research question. And the sample size we're asking for is 50. Okay, so let's see. And then I really have been discouraging students from using children for your participants. If you do, you must get permission from the parent, and you have to be careful. I do not want, it can be very sensitive. So I had a student who was actually going to do interview or question adolescents, and then that student decided, oh, I think I'm going, instead of that, I am going to do a reflective study and interview college students about their childhood experiences. And that is perfectly, that's actually perfect, because then you don't have to worry about getting permission. Okay. Now, let me back up. Any participant that you have, adult or not, must sign a consent form. And actually the consent forms, let me show you where those are. Give me a second. It's called an informed consent. Okay, under week 5, what is a method? Actually, is it weeks? Oh, there we go. Week 6, consent forms. All right. So please know, if you are using live participants, everybody has to have every one of their participants sign a consent form. All right. When I say stray away from children, if you can, you're going to have to get the parent involved and ask the parent to sign it. You see, that's an extra step. If you have access to children and their parents, go for it. And you feel like the study is not sensitive, go for it. But if you can do something with adults, so much easier, because the adult will sign it. There's 2 different types of consent forms. You have implied. The implied consent form is the one that you will use if you are doing an online survey. Okay. So it's an anonymous survey online. You don't know you don't even know who your participants are going to be, right? So you're going to do the implied consent form, and you use this language right here, the exact language right here, to put at the top of your online tool. And when the person actually fills out the form and sends it in, they are given their implied consent. Okay, no one under 18 is allowed to participate in this study. All right. So use this if you're doing an online survey. If you are doing an interview, for example, you will use the regular informed consent form here. Just use it. You don't have to change anything except for the X's, right? This study is being done by student, the title, purpose, all of this. You fill this out. And before you actually conduct the study with that participant, you must have this in hand. Either they email it back to you, or if you're doing it in person, they give it to you, or you have them sign it before you start asking them questions, okay, or surveying them. So this consent form is going to be, now, I don't want everybody's consent forms. This is for you, to make sure you have them, because this is the proper way to do research. So what I do want to see, this informed consent form is part of your materials. Remember the paper. And I failed to show you that I'm going to need appendices. Okay. I'm jumping around a little bit. I don't have a few more minutes, but the appendices, it goes at the end of your paper, but it's connected to your method. So when you're writing your method in the materials section, part of your materials will be an informed consent. The researcher plans to give the informed consent form to the participants. So what you're going to do is an appendix. This will be your appendix A. All right. And just give me a blank copy of the informed consent, whether it's this one or the implied one. Appendix B will probably be, for most people, your actual interview questions or survey questions. This is a very important part, and we ought to hear before I close. You're going to write your method in future tense, but I also need to see your questions. Or if you decide to use a instrument that's already been developed, maybe you read in one of your literature review sources that a particular researcher used this particular instrument, this particular questionnaire. You might want to use that. You don't have to make up your questionnaire. You can get one that's already done and use that for your research. That is a material for your project. Okay, I want to see that. I want to see the questionnaire, the online survey, the assessment, or whatever you're using to collect your data in the appendices. But you're going to mention what it is in your method. Okay. And actually, before I'm going to real quick, I got a few more minutes, trying to stay on time here. I'll go back to the APA template really quick to show you this to people who are visual. Okay, so let's go back to the method. So in your materials and procedure, you're going to mention the consent form. You're going to mention that whatever your material is, your interview or your online survey or your assessment that you're going to use. But you're going to, and then what you're going to say is see Appendix A for the consent form. See Appendix B for your whatever instrument you're using or survey you're using. After the reference section is where your appendices go. So Appendix A. Oh, let me back up. If you actually use a tool to recruit people, let's say you, I don't know, send out a flyer to say, need students 18 and up to do this survey for me. That's a material. So that would be all your materials, proof of your materials go here in the appendices section. So Appendix A is the one after the references, page 1, Appendix A. Appendix B, if you don't use any recruitment materials, that's fine. Then informed consent will go to A. Everybody's going to be different. Appendix C should be your interview questions or survey, and actually that should be D, my bad, D, anything else you believe you should show the reader about the tools you use to conduct your study. All right. So I know this was a lot, but I wanted to just kind of give everybody a little, boost here to tell you to get prepared for this method section. Remember, you're telling me what you plan to do. Okay. You're telling me what you plan to do. So write your method in future tense, write or provide your instrument that you're going to use to collect your data with your participants. All right, I need to see that. You have 2 weeks to do it. All right, week 7 and 8, I believe. Yeah, 7 and 8. Because 9, 10, and 11 is when you're going to collect the data. You're actually going to do it, right? All right, so it's a fast-paced class, I know, but you guys are doing great. I've gotten everybody's annotated bibliographies. I hope you're using those to write your literature review. That's due on Sunday. And I'm going to have to do a quick turnaround for you just so you can see if there's any problems with the research question or anything you've done. What I'm going to do is give it back to you and just tell you what you need to fix before you submit your final paper. You don't have to resubmit it to me, but you need to look at the notes and correct as you go along. And if you need me to look at it again, I will before you turn the final paper in, but I don't need it to be resubmitted, but I will tell you what you need to fix. If there's a big problem, then we might have to have a conversation or something, but everybody's doing pretty great, right? Then you're going to start working on that method. I just went over all of that. All right. If you need to have more questions, then you can certainly reach out to me through the classroom, Canvas, email, like you've all been doing. All right. Okay. Let's see. Do you have any questions, Megan, before we hang up?
Oh, I'm good. Thank you for doing a visual. I'm a very visual person, so that's awesome. You had the format and everything. It really helped me understand it. Yeah.
Oh, great. Great. I'm so glad you came. So I've recorded this, so everybody's going to hear you, Megan. So I hope you're okay.
Oh, it's okay.
So I'm going to post this today, and then I'm going to do this again on next week. I have two classes, so I'm actually going to post both of the lectures in each class because I may say something a little different or explain it differently because I explain things differently for each class, but it's the same. But I might give a different example that might make more sense. So I appreciate you being here, and this I think hopefully will be helpful to other students as well. So if you don't have any more questions, I'll just go ahead and stop recording. Thank you, class.